before I say anything, I just want to give a shout out to NCRA for not printing the program. I'm a big fan of digital and getting information that way. That's what we do at Recyclist, so it's pretty awesome to show up and see you guys hadn't printed 355 pieces of paper. So anyways, before I go through the few things I'm going to talk about in my 10 minutes here, I just thought I'd give you a little bit of background on why someone from the tech industry is talking to you at a waste conference or at a recycling conference. So my background is that I got my start in the tech industry in the .com era, which for those of you guys who were in the Bay Area at the time was like the first time that this whole place went completely insane. And I worked at a startup then, and while a lot of people were hanging out and like drinking beer and playing beer, ping pong and making lots of money, a few of us were working really hard and gaining lots of skills and not making a lot of money. But it was really cool because we got to kind of build what was the first iteration of the internet. And from that, I went on to work at a couple other companies and, per my introduction, ran my own web design development agency, doing technology consulting, building websites for about 10 years. And then a couple years ago, this industry caught my interest. And it was really just as a regular old resident, because I was interested in how come it was that it was so impossible to find good recycling information online, which is where I was looking for it and not finding it. So I started asking around and talking to people, and I found out that there was information that was being published in the phone book, and I didn't know where my phone book was or if I had one, that things were going out in pamphlets, that there was hotlines I could call, but I really was baffled as to why, in general, it was not readily available online, the information that I was seeking online. So that's the problem that I initially set out to solve with my company, Recyclist. So the first thing that we built was basically a turnkey website that any municipal recycling program can use to promote their recycling program. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that and sort of some things we found from building and actually having those up and running. Oh, that worked. Okay, so my first slide here is a picture of my older son, CJ. And this serves two purposes. One is that I live up in Truckee in the Tahoe area, and when people find that out, especially this winter, they want to know how much snow we have. So this is CJ standing literally on my street in front of my house a couple weeks ago. So it's totally nuts. It's been very incapacitating. If any of you are waiting for me to reply to an email, this is why. This is what we're dealing with. But the other reason why I put him up here is that the last time that I built a website that was designed to be viewed on a computer was when I was pregnant with CJ, and he is not a small child. So for many years now, we in the tech industry have been designing websites to work. They're not just mobile friendly, they're actually mobile first. So we are designing for everything to be accessed on a phone before it is accessed on a computer. And the reason why is this. So these are some statistics from, like I said, we run municipal recycling websites for a number of municipalities across the state. And the statistics that we find for the users of our sites is this, that 7 out of every 10 of them are accessing recycling information on a website from a phone. So if those of you who are in the business of getting information out there about your programs, if it's not mobile friendly, you are only even potentially reaching 3 out of every 10 people in your community. So it's really that serious. Like if you're like, yeah, it would be better if it was mobile friendly, it's like, yeah, no, you're really missing those 7 people. Similarly, we find that 6 out of every 10 visitors to our municipal recycling websites come from Google or Yahoo or Bing a little bit. So again, if your information is buried in a PDF, and PDFs can't really be indexed by search engines very well, if it's 10 clicks down in a city website, which means that's a signal to Google, we don't care about this page, your potential of even reaching people is down to 4 out of every 10 people in your community. So this stuff is actually, it seems like it's sort of like the icing on the cake, but it's actually pretty important. There's infinite stats that show that digital is how people are receiving information today. So it's really important to make it accessible to them. Okay, my next slide is a test. So everybody who's looking at their phone has to look up, because you got 3 seconds to look at this. Okay, Raise your hand if you can recite back to me what you just saw on the screen letter for letter. Maybe Carolina and Grace can. No, they're not even raising their hands. Okay, here is the next test. 3 seconds. Okay, raise your hand if you can recite back to me what you just saw on the screen. Okay, best $15 you could spend in your recycling program is what we call a Vanity URL. So in the case of Stockton Recycles, they actually are a customer of ours, so that actually goes to a real a standalone website that we produce for them. But you can buy your city, whatever its name is, recycles.com, and point it to that really long, painful URL that you're currently using. This literally costs you $15. You can put it on your cart tags. You can put it on your brochures. You can put it literally on, in your signature file. Anything that you do to promote your program, it will cost you $15. It will make a huge difference. It won't make a huge difference tomorrow, but if you do it continually again and again, and it just becomes the branding that you use for your program, people will actually know where to go to get information about your program. I can't recommend this strongly enough. I notice a few people do it, but most people don't, and I think everybody should be. So that's my soapbox about that. Okay, so I have a few more minutes left, and I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about some other work we've done in the commercial side. So like I said, I came into this industry about 2 years ago. I literally didn't know what a MRF was. I didn't know what solid waste was. I didn't know anything. And I did not know that half of the waste generated comes from the commercial sector. But from talking to people, I've learned that. I also happened to start my company right around when AB 1826 was coming into fashion. So we've ended up doing a lot of work on the commercial side, and we've developed something called a commercial outreach app, which is a web-based tool that does a bunch of things. It does estimations of organics waste generation, different businesses in a community. It tracks the outreach. It tracks your compliance. It does right sizing and cost estimating, all sorts of stuff like that. So, but specifically, I wanted to talk about one of the things that I learned in talking to people about how they're sort of managing their commercial recycling programs. And so this is the most common situation that I ended up finding when I've gone out and talked to people, which is like somebody's got a spreadsheet and it's got all the businesses in it, and there's just one person in their one spreadsheet, and it might be kind of a mess, but that is what it is. It gets more complicated when that person all of a sudden is part of a team, and then there's 5 people, and there's 5 different spreadsheets, and all the spreadsheets are a little bit different, and then their manager has to report and has to combine data from 5 different spreadsheets, and it's a total nightmare. And then one of the people leaves, and then all of a sudden, who knows where that guy's spreadsheet was because he left, and you hire someone new, and they try to use their spreadsheet, and they can't understand the information in there. This seems to be the most common way to manage commercial recycling programs from a municipal point of view. So this is my strong suggestion to everyone who does that in this audience, is the joys of CRM, customer relationship management software. If implemented properly, it is an incredibly powerful tool. If not implemented properly, it's actually really frustrating. But if you get it done right, Salesforce is probably the most commonly known one. There's some other ones out that they're great. Like I said, we have a tool that has CRM built into it. But basically the idea here is it's one central repository. Track what's going on with your compliance, track what's going on with your outreach, have everybody on the same tool, have reports come out of there. I can't tell you how revolutionary this could be for people if everybody would get on the CRM train. So please do consider it. And the final thing I want to talk about, and you guys are going to think I've gone a little bit off the rails on the tech side of things here, but I do have a point, is application programming interfaces. So this is really, really common in the tech industry. A lot of the software that you are familiar with has these because basically what an API is it's programming that allows softwares to, different kinds of software to talk to each other and to share data. Really, really common, and this is why I think it is of interest to this community, is like, what if your CRM or your customer service software could talk to your fleet management or your routeware and your Scalehouse software, and what if then you could get like unified reporting out of it, and you could run waste assessments, and you could check all your compliance, and like, what if you had all these different softwares and they actually could talk to each other? This does not seem to be the case in my experience in this industry so far. Maybe I just haven't found all of the tools where everybody shares information, but it seems to me that a lot of things are being developed in silos, and it's really, really limiting. Because we're sort of in that open data, open software, everything open space, and we're just we keep running into walls, and I really think it's incredibly limiting for this industry to not. I mean, I understand there's some privacy issues around data, but in general, there's so much that we could be sharing, and there's so much information that could be going between our different systems, and I think it would be really empowering, and I think it would make allow people to make huge progress in this industry in terms of what we're doing. So to that end, I'm just going to give a little plug for those of you who are going to be at Swanapalooza next week. My company is hosting the first ever tech meetup within the waste industry, to the best of my knowledge, and that's just the hour before the cocktails kick off the night of the conference kickoff. What's that? Oh, so anyways, if anybody is interested in these kind of developing open data standards, working on data issues, figuring out how we can move forward in a more progressive way in the future on the technology side of the business, super informal. We're all just going to get together and kick around ideas and see what we can do to make that happen. So, yeah.
Yeah. Mercy of their, and the way their information comes out, it really is not in any way helpful to me. So how would a specialized program work with existing billing?
Yeah, that is sort of the key question. So the question is, if we have software, or you use Salesforce or our software somewhere to, do your CRM, but you already have an existing, whether it's, within your city, the utility billing, or sometimes it's with the hauler's billing, two separate systems, that seems less than ideal. I do not have the silver bullet for that, but I can tell you that, what seems to be happening now is when it's stuck in a utility billing system, or when the information's stuck with the hauler, people still are having these other spreadsheets on the other side. So, it's between having no access to the system and having a spreadsheet, or having no access to the system and having your own system. So there are a lot of dual systems out there. It's not ideal, but also from a point of view of when you're doing outreach to businesses, when you look at the billing, it's often, when you look at the strip mall situation, you bill a dumpster, you bill a property management company, but you actually want to deal with those individual businesses. So often it almost makes sense to have a list of the businesses, because that's different than a list of dumpsters. And so, ultimately, and the person who pays the bills might not be the person who you want to do your outreach to. So maintaining two, it has a downside, but there can be some upsides. Yeah, that's a good question. Is it your problem that Dropbox drives you crazy? Have you tried Google Drive? Yeah, technology for sure can be very frustrating. I would not say that every technological experience is going to be great, but it generally moves us in a positive direction, I think. Yeah. Okay, yeah, no problem.